Welcome back to Building Extraordinary Brands. My name is Jacob Cass, and today I'm joined by Fabian Geyrhalter, renowned brand strategist, author, speaker, and the founder of FINIEN. He's advised global brands like Marriott, Match, Warner Brothers, and Honeywell, and he's recently flipped the script, building his own product brand, Toneoptic, which went from sketch to six-figure investment. In this episode, we're going to unpack what happens when a strategist becomes the client, what branding looks like when the rubber meets the road, where traditional frameworks fall short, what Fabian's learned from his approach, and maybe we'll talk about brand therapy a little bit as well. So welcome, Fabian. Let's get into it.
Yeah, good to be here again. Good to see you.
Yeah, so Fabian and I have known each other for about 5-6 years now. He was kind of like a mentor to me when I was moving into brand strategy and taking his courses, and we've had many chats over the years. So it's great to finally get him on the podcast and jump into this. So, yeah, let's kick off. You've helped launch and transform so many different brands, but now you've done your own. So, what made you decide that this was the time to launch your own product?
It starts with a sigh, because it's this thing. It's like, I'm sure that a lot of you can relate to that, where you have a sketchbook full of ideas, right? And it's like, wouldn't it be cool if you could do this, or a product that would do X, or right? And you have all these ideas, and they collect dust and dust and dust, and then the pandemic hit, and one of those ideas that collected dust became more interesting to me again, because we had a little bit more free time, right? Even though it was strange free time, it was free time. And I'm a record collector. I love music. I've got a couple of thousands of records. I always was into it. It became kind of like a hip thing over the last 5 or 10 years again, which is really cool.
You're so hip.
I'm so hip. I'm ahead of so we can stop the recording right now, because that's all people need to know. I'm ahead of the curve. I'm just like, what are you going to do? So what happened is that I had more time to listen to my records, and I basically listened to the same 10, 20 records, even though I have 2,000, right? And so what I realized is...
It's like fonts, Fabian.
That is exactly what it is. And I was just addicted to Comic Sans, and that's all I did. No, it's like the equivalent of Backstreet Boys, I guess. No, let's not get into taste here. No, so the way that it works with records, you like to store them the same way that you store books on a library style, right? So you have all of the spines facing you, and it's really beautiful, and you like to show off all of your records. The problem is you can't read these spines. They're tiny. Most of them don't have type on it, right? And I had this silly idea like a long time ago, where I'm like, wouldn't it be cool? You can pull them out, and they're in a drawer, and it rotates out. You can flip through them like in a record store and push them right back into the wall. Well, and then was the pandemic, and I'm like, well, why doesn't no one do that? Why don't I how hard could it be?
How hard could it be? Famous last words.
Oh my God. That's like when you talk to a developer as a designer, and the designer is like, well, can't you just code this? How hard could it be? It's like, 24 hours later, hey, I've got an MVP, which of course these days is different. Yeah, I started something really, really bad, really big, right? And Jacob, to your question of what made you realize you wanted to start a whole brand, a D2C product? I didn't really. I just wanted to make this product a reality. And if it was really cool, maybe I start selling it, right? And so I did everything that one has to do. I did all the sketches. I hired a product designer. We did mock-ups. We did actual product samples. It's the whole 9 yards. And then once you're $10,000 in, you're like, nah. Then you're $50,000 in, and you're like, oh. And then you're $100,000 in, and you're like, oh, shoot. I started something that I need to start selling.
Wow. Well, tell us about it. What is it? Who's it for? How does it work? And then we can kind of jump into the branding decisions.
Yeah. So the brand is called Toneoptic. It was inspired by David Bowie's Sound and Vision. So Tone and Optic. Very, very simple brand name. We can talk about the name later on. And what it really does is we're at this point, we are turning into a product design innovation company that plays in the functional furniture space specifically for audio media, right? So currently it's records. In the future, it might be other products as well. That's really where we play. The product itself is innovative because it rotates as you take your records out, rotates 90 degrees. You flip through it, you go go back in. The product comes in two colors and two configurations. It's modestly priced at $375 and $325 per pop for 50 records, which is pretty highly priced. So it is definitely a luxury and high-end design product right now, and that's also the market that we went after in the beginning. Yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah, let's talk about that market. So who's buying these things? Is it like production studios or like, mansion owners?
Yeah, more the latter. So look, what happens is if you're a first time product designer slash furniture builder slash D2C company running person like me, you basically create a prototype that then turns very quickly into a product that you start selling. So what I'm selling currently, it's not a plug and play that you can just put into your room. You actually need to adhere it to your wall or adhere it to a furniture piece. It is some work. It's a commitment. It's also expensive, right? So for a medium-sized record collection, you're going to drop a couple $1,000s most probably, right? A lot of people just have 80 records, 50 records, right? They buy one of them. It's awesome. They love having it hang on the wall or be on like a piece of furniture. Totally fine too. But what I learned very quickly is that my audience in the beginning, they have to be people that have the same problem that I had to solve for myself, right? And that's a typical startup story. I'm sure you hear it over and over. Well, I saw the problem in the marketplace. No one fills it, so I did.
Yes.
Mine is a macro problem in the macro, like space, which is record listening people, record collectors that have a certain kind of income that appreciate it and that have the same problem that I had, right? So
Yes.
currently my audience really is very much people like myself. So it's people that are anywhere between 40 and 65 years old. It's predominantly male. It's people who have extra income that they can spend on fun toys and their hobbies, and that one of their hobbies be a record room where they basically have their amazing hi-fi equipment and they have their hundreds or thousands of records, not hundreds of thousands, but that too sometimes. And they want that kind of storage, and that's when they come to Toneoptic.
Okay. And how are you finding these people? It sounds very, yeah. How do you like
Well,
snipe them out?
it's actually easier because it is so specific, right?
Okay.
So when you say, hey, like I have a product for moms, like new moms, and it's really for every mom. It's like, well, how do you find her? Because you have to advertise to every mom and then to find within all the moms who really likes your product. For me, it's pretty specific. I mean, it's like, like with Meta, it's very easy to find exactly those people who like, like those hobbies and who like those kind of sites and who have a certain income, who live in certain areas where I know the hotspots. Since we already went through a whole product run and sold a whole product run, I do have data that shows me where people live, not in a creepy way, but enough to get a really good idea. I mean, you laugh about this, but the whole idea of stalking your customer in the beginning, I think is super, super important. It's more important than when a brand agency says, here's your customer persona, right? Because that goes out the window in like month 3, because then you get the actual data back and you're like, oh, this really is my customer. Yes. And what's actually really important with that is having that foresight when you build your brand. And you and I think about this constantly as brand strategists, right? But for me, it was so important to see this in action. My brand in 3 months from now can completely pivot and talk to an Urban Outfitter, like 20-something-year-old and have a product on the market that is a very accessible, type record storage, right? I can do that with my brand DNA, with the brand name, with, with all of that. But you can't do that when you come up with a super stodgy name or a super hip name, or you're like, I know exactly who we're going after. You can't pivot like that. You need to be able to pivot. You need to have that flexibility. It's super important.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had the foresight to think about that, and it's a big decision.
The foresight, I mean, it's like plan for the best and plan for the worst. You have to, and then everything else hits you every day, and you just had to maneuver through a lot of craziness. As entrepreneurship is. And I tell you one thing, Jacob, like you and I, as like, oh, we're running an agency or we run an agency or we are in the service business and we have clients and we're like, it is so night and day when you're selling a product to hundreds of people and suddenly you have hundreds of customers and you have to figure out your margins and you have to figure out shipping and you have to figure out production and you have to, I'm like, it was so extremely stressful. Like there were moments that were so much more stressful than in my like 20 plus years of being a creative or being a brand strategist. So it's like
it's a totally different business. It's like
totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the decisions, right? So when you first started it, like what were the first branding decisions you had to make?
So look, this is interesting because I'm running a consultancy that preliminarily primary works with startups, with entrepreneurs, usually smaller teams that already have some sort of budget, but I set them up with exactly the process that I needed. So here I am and I'm like, okay, it's like there were weeks where I'm like, I should just start going. I mean, I know what I'm doing. I'm the brand guy. I can just go. Like, let's go, right? I need to move. Typical entrepreneur, right?
Yep,
And then I'm like,
100%.
no, slow down. Do it the right way. Do the brand strategy document first. Figure out the brand DNA. Do your mission. Do the whole thing, right? And then do the name and then do the identity and then do the full on, like, here's the vision of rollout. I did that, I would say, to 85%, as much as I could contain myself to actually follow into my own footsteps. I did it and it was extremely useful to do that. But what happens very, very quickly is that you realize that you have that vision, but you don't have the ability. So meaning like, like when you build a brand, you build like, oh, cool. And this is how it's going to look here. And this is what we're going to do here. And this is how the website's going to be and blah, blah, blah. And then you realize you're like, oh, shoot, I'm out of money again. It's like, wait a minute, we just had this budget. And it's like, and so it's like not having that ability to fulfill all of your like brand ideas immediately is something that usually with clients, I don't have that problem, right? Because I just unload everything with them and say, good luck. And it's going to be great.
Their
And I'm
decision
sure.
making.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, like that idea of vision versus reality, becoming a big blocker in brand building for me is like then owning the brand and executing upon that vision. That was extremely interesting of a
Well, I'm curious, like the process you usually use, you said you did about 80% of it. Like what parts of it kind of like broke down when you were going through that process?
So look, I mean, our process is perfect, nothing ever. So, well, I actually think that our process, it actually made it through the test okay. Meaning the idea that the way that I run brand strategy is like an 8-hour session. It's like super fast for an entrepreneur. That was great for me. I did it myself during a flight to Europe, right? So it was perfect. Like I could get that done. The only thing that happens is that once I have so much more empathy for entrepreneurs, right? So meaning it's like I actually really can meet them where they're at now. Where before I gave them everything to empower them, but I didn't really know what they had coming. Now I know what they're going to have coming. They're going to pivot all the time. Things are going to change. The target audience is going to change. What are they going to do, right? And so what went right was that I had the foresight, right? That having that brand DNA, having that brand clarity, understanding what space I'm in, understanding that one through line of a word, which for us was discovery, and it still is discovery. That is something that has to stay the same, right? What did change was that in month 2, my creative director suddenly used a different font, and I'm like, hey, Jesse, what's going on? Like you and I built this brand together just like weeks ago, right? Like, and she's like, yeah, it was just time. Like it felt right. And it was so funny. Instead of me being, what do you mean it felt right? We're brand builders. And I'm like, you're right. It felt right. And so what I realized, I'm like bad client, right? It's like I can't even go like a month or 2 without breaking that style guide. It was super interesting. And it actually, I realized that a lot of our clients and a lot of you listening, and you maybe yourself too, Jacob, since you work on those type of projects too, you empower your client, you give them everything. You're like, this is going to be your brand. Great. Now go build your site, go build your material. I can't wait to see it. And then you see it like 6 months later or 12 months later, and you're like, what happened? I'm like, who did this? Like, what happened? Right. And so This is something now, and I think together with AI and the ability to have more flexible style guides and update things as you go within guardrails,
Yes.
right? And those guardrails being brand strategy, not brand design, but brand
Mm-hmm.
strategy.
Yep.
We are next month going to go on our third design pivot where we're moving things around, or maybe fourth, right? And I'm in business for, I don't know, 2 years now, right? So there is something about, and this is different for a B2B company. This is different for a professional services company, right? Where you can really stay in your lane for 3 years completely, right? In D2C, what I learned is I was empowered with material, but that material took me maybe 2 weeks to like, here's a post for this. Here's a post for this. Here's how video looks on social. Here's this, right? And then after 2 weeks, I posted everything and I'm like, I need something else. And then at some point, I just started intrinsically owning the brand and going forward and post and redo and rethink on the fly, get my graphic designer involved and say, how do we solve this? A lot of people say that. And for me, I was never in this position, but implementation is really what makes a brand work or break.
Yep.
So if
you're testing
yeah.
and like iterating. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But that is something that, that was something that idea of design as you go, which is the biggest fear of every brand person. It is a reality. It is a necessity. And now it's really more about how can we as brand builders change that process to enable our clients to have more of that flexibility and ability to work with very few constraints, still be always on brand, but be able to expand upon the brand, right? And reiterate as they go. So that's something that I definitely learned, that idea, and the idea of letting go of perfection, which I know you, Jacob, you know me.
Yep.
This is not an easy feature.
It's not easy, is it?
I mean, you just have to keep moving. You have to keep moving, right? And there are certain things where, for a client, I would have not let it go out, but I know that tomorrow there's going to be a new post and tomorrow is going to be a new email and tomorrow. And you look at the email 3 times in the beginning and then you look at it 1.5 times later on, right? And for clients, you look at it 10 times.
Yep.
And so that idea of like organic branding, that was my biggest epiphany, really, because the rest of the process works and you need it, right? You need to have that foresight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the most important thing here is that you mentioned those guardrails, the strategic boundaries that you set. And it was only because you went through that process to define those boundaries in the beginning that you could come back to it and use that. Whereas if you skip that, like many entrepreneurs do, you kind of get off track and off the rails. So the brand kind of doesn't have that DNA. It's just new, and it's like can be confusing. I think because you went through that, you just had better clarity on where to go, and just the feeling, felt right. That's because you just knew, right?
But that's insane to me. The idea that I would say, yeah, completely pivot from the style guide because it feels right, right? Like so like I would have always fought against it. I'm like, well, no, that's impossible. Like we set the rules,
set this in
right?
stone.
Like this is insane.
Well, looking back at it, is there anything you'd change or do differently?
Yeah. So we're currently in the process, and we haven't finished it yet, but there are 2 events, right? The one is where I am now an entrepreneur myself, and I see how these businesses behave and how the brand needs to behave, by its side in parallel. That's one event. And then the other event is AI, right? And I think both of these events happening at the same time right now is really interesting for us to pivot, not anything on the front end, like you said, like from the strategy perspective, this is very much the same type of process. But on the back end of like, how do we deliver these assets, and even calling them assets, right? Like, how do you create more like modules that clients can pop into it and that they then can morph within certain guardrails? And we're working with different ideas of how to exactly implement that yet. And the speed that AI is going, tomorrow there's already going to be a service provider that does exactly that. We might tap into a third party that helps with that. A lot of these brand folder sites like where you can upload your assets. All of them are slowly understanding too, in order to equip your team, you can have templates. It's okay to have templates, but how far do you let them, work
How
within or
flexible, yeah.
outside of those? Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned before that you become more empathetic towards entrepreneurs. Is there anything else that you've learned that you would apply to your process now, or give advice to, you know, brand builders that are doing the same thing?
I mean, the one thing that I always knew at my heart is that entrepreneurs, founders, even though they might not be the best designers, they might not be brand strategists, they might not understand or even follow the process, intrinsically they are the best brand builders. And that's not because of what I've done, but I realized that the decisions that I need to make in order to make the business successful, they need to then go down to the brand level, and then the brand needs to push up the product again, right? So it's
Okay.
always this thing of like innovation, right? You have something innovative, super cool, everyone comes to your site anyways because it's just super cool. Then that innovation starts coming down, and then a new product comes up, and in between the brand needs to push, right? And how does that brand keep pushing up your offerings? I think that is something that I really underestimated. I have a podcast, as you know, and some of the listeners might know, called Hitting the Mark, where I don't talk to brand people, even though I appreciate you having me on, which I think is fantastic. But I only talk to founders of of companies, and I find it so interesting. And maybe it was just a matter of time for me to start my own, like product company,
Yeah.
because I find it extremely interesting how founders build a brand, right? Like who is involved on the outside, like how much of it comes intrinsically from them. And so that is something where I feel like I understand founders more now, and I can talk to them on the same level, where before I pretended I'm just hey, I'm running a thing, you're running a thing, right? But now it's very different because we can talk about tariffs and like lost, like shipping cargo and
I
all the
think I
fun
think
stuff.
it's I think this path was made for you, Fabian, because as you said, like your podcast is just focused on that. So you're just exposed to all those stories and learnings, and it's probably inspired you to do your own as well. The question I had was, you mentioned innovation, and it's one of those challenges that innovators face, is that they innovate and they differentiate, and then suddenly you have copycats or people coming into the marketplace. So I'm curious, have you seen copycats? How are you dealing with that?
So one thing you need to know is that I think 3 months into starting the company, a dear friend of mine said, "You have to write a book about this." And I'm like, okay. So I listened to him, and I'm so grateful because I'm like 120 pages in or so.
Okay.
So that like every week or every moment where there's this crazy, oh shit moment of like, did this really just happen? There are so many moments, like especially in the first year, where you just constantly start figuring out like, what in the world is this real? Like, could these things happen? Because everything that can go wrong goes wrong, and everything unexpected is happening, right? So copycats, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and in a very, very strange way too. It's like copycats in the way of like Alibaba style made in China companies, right? Where you basically can select your t-shirt size when you check out My Unit. And it's like, no. This is a record storage. I shouldn't be able to do that, right? And why is it only $40 if the original is like 300 whatever dollars, right? So it is apparent that it is copycats, but not in the way that they were able to actually pull off our product, because the product is extremely complex. The mechanism is complex. I patented it. I trademarked it. I have a patent in China. I have one here. Lots of money, lots of time went into that. But then nothing keeps people of just pulling all of our assets from our website, because everything needs to be pretty high res these days, right? Grab everything, put it on a website, somewhere in a dorm room in Shanghai, right? And you just put it on for $40. You grab people's credit card information, and you sell that. And that's basically it. And no one will ever see a product. I had a slew of people come to us and say, hey, I ordered it on that site. I just want to make sure that's really your product. And I'm like, are you insane?
Yes.
Like, no. And so, but it shows you that we think we have a certain target audience, right? That's highly educated, right? Like they have, like spare money. They're in their 50s, 60s. But yet you get these people that just don't seem to really, like look at, the site and read it. And, so it's more of a brand delusion problem rather than like a brand competition problem, because it just makes people feel like, oh wait, this is everywhere now and it's cheaper now, it's not special anymore, let me move on. So we took that as our it came at the same time that I received funding for the company, that now we're going super fast into R&D for like the next innovative product that's going to be very different from the first unit, so that we have something else in the marketplace and it's not that one trick pony, but we can, like, that's what you need to do with innovation, right? It's like when someone out innovates you, you already have to be at the next product, right? You already have to be ahead of it.
Yeah, can you give us a glimpse, or is it under wraps?
It is officially under wraps, but it will be a different it will be a new product also for record storage, but it will be very different than this. And it's basically taking a spin, no pun intended, on a current typical way of storing records, but it's done with the typical like new innovation and more functionality and high-end design.
Amazing. Are there any other big roadblocks or challenges that came up, like the copycats? You said everything goes wrong, so I'm curious, like what happened?
I mean, listen, I mean, everything went wrong. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes that I made in hindsight is I made a prototype that was super, super, super gorgeous. Sadly, you can still see it online when you search for Toneoptic, most probably. It was this beautiful walnut box, and it had the unit inside, and it was just gorgeous. It cost us, I don't know, like 1,500 to produce. I sold it for like, I don't know, 2,500 or something crazy, right? People bought it. There were a couple of people that bought it. I couldn't ship it. I couldn't ship it for the life of me. Like that walnut together with the aluminum, it was unshippable, right? It just collapsed in itself. Okay. Because it's not flat pack shipping like we do now, and I didn't go through all of that. I'm like, well, if the box is big enough and if there's enough cushion inside, it's going to work, right? It was those kind of things where you produce a product that's not shippable, and you would think, well, that's the most logical thing, until you realize that, there's a process to all of that, right? But there were plenty of really cool moments. Where I get an Instagram message in the middle of the night by the guy from Slipknot, and he's like, dude, this is awesome. Get on a video call. I need these for the studio, right? It's like things like that. And then 2 weeks later, I meet him in an airplane together with Kelly Osbourne, and like I hang out with them. And it's like stuff like that where suddenly you're like, well, this is not my world normally, but now it is my world. And how do I navigate that, right? And so it's just crazy stories every other day. But what can go wrong went wrong is people were just going online immediately after I launched that prototype of a product at insane prices, where they just basically slammed it. So they slammed the price. They said, this is the craziest thing ever. Who would pay that much money? Which, of course, yeah, true. And I was just testing it out. And then months later, I had millions of people go after a viral video of that old unit, even though we already launched a new unit. So now I basically had to do like damage control of people saying, I want exactly this. And I'm like, we're the company that does that, but now it looks like this, right? Yeah. And so we couldn't really utilize those millions of views with our company because we weren't ready to launch at the time that I started to release a lot of that stuff. So it was more of like an entrepreneur who's super excited to get stuff out, hope for the best. And then the best happened, but it happened at the worst time. And so that is stuff as a brand person, you don't think like a PR agency of like, okay, in 6 months, you're going to do that. I'm like, no, I have a roadway. Like I've got like money in the account for like 2 more months. I need to keep going. Right.
Yep. Yeah. Wow. Jeez. What a ride, man. I'm curious. You talk about brand therapy a lot. Did you apply any of that to yourself for the build?
What do you mean? Every hour was brand therapy. No, you know what? Yeah. I mean, to me, brand therapy is very much, and it's this silly term that I somehow, ended up coining. And now brand therapy Thursday is a thing, and you do the hashtag, and a lot of people do it, which I think is super cool, right? Yeah. And I've got 2 books by the name of brand therapy. But for me, brand therapy is really that idea that you talk to founders, you talk to customers, and you let that sink in, and then you do something with it, right? So that's the therapeutic piece where you just talk and you listen, and you really that conversation is what gives you the end result. So my workshop is very much about like sitting with someone, usually a group of like 8 people or so, C-suite of a company, and talking with them and getting the brand strategy out of them. So it's like co-creating it, right? So for me, the brand therapy was less me talking to myself, even though of course I do that all the time with this, but it was more about like listening to others and having tons of, you said that I was a mentor of yours in the beginning, right? I have people at, like the founder of Cambridge Audio and like amazing people around me now that hold hands with me for really no reason. They're just there for me, and I can sound off and I can ask them, how does that work in the retail landscape? Or how does that work in the hi-fi world? Or how does that work in the D2C world, right? So that to me was the brand therapy part, really, of like being able to listen and learn a lot. And keeping that brand clarity from the beginning, having that installed and infused, and just keeping that line, even though everything else is changing all the time, like that was really, really important.
Yeah, you mentioned discovery was a key component of the DNA of the brand. You mentioned a few people there, but I was going to ask, because you said you talk to yourself but in reality, who do you talk to about your brand, like for decision making? You had a graphic designer, you mentioned, someone else in the industry. Is there any like...
It's what this is actually, I'm glad that you bring this up, because this is something that I think every founder or every entrepreneur, once they're at a place where they feel like they have an interesting story or an interesting product, or maybe even something to give back to someone else that you need their services of, right? Create a board of advisors, like just an advisory board that you don't even have to pay. It's just people that you meet with on a monthly basis, on a one-on-one for half an hour, and you ask them all the questions about entrepreneurship or about product or about whatever you need answers for. And in return, if you're a brand strategist or if you're a brand builder, if you're a marketer, you do the same thing for them, right? And so that's how I got my advisory board together. And I think there are about 5 people right now. There's Travis Rosbach, who started Hydro Flask. He's the founder of Hydro Flask. We talk on a weekly now, which is amazing. Like, he turned into a really good friend now. But it started with the idea of him guiding me, of producing a product, and me guiding him with creating personal brand and creating his brand, et cetera, et cetera. But you would be surprised that people actually want to help. Like, if people see you with an interesting idea in a space and they say, look, I think that you can actually make it, people want to help. So an advisory board, for me, that was extremely, extremely important. And then, of course, it's the typical, like targets of like, my creative director, who helped a lot on that side, right? Or a copywriter at Chameleon Collective, where I'm a partner at. Like, he was super, super cool, bringing in some great copy. And so it's like people around you usually, and your significant other is usually the one that has to suffer the most.
True. Okay, so you mentioned a few in your team there. You have a board of director or advisors, and you have a creative director, a copywriter, graphic designer, junior product designers, developers. Is anything else you'd add to that?
It's really, look, the truth of the matter is this is a one-person shop, for better or worse, right? So it's basically, I lend Jesse, who's the creative director / designer from my own agency, to work on Toneoptic, right? But it's all under my agency. I hire a product designer to execute my napkin sketches and my ideas, right? And then, so it's basically, the company is not at the place right now. Again, it's like 6-digit kind of company. Like, we're just getting started and we just got the investment. And so we're at a place right now where we don't have employees yet, right? So I'm really the only one doing everything, which is a catastrophe and a really good stress test, but it's also fun. And I'm going to have a book at the end of it.
There you go.
And maybe a company, maybe.
It's exciting though. It's really exciting. So how much time are you spending on this versus like your consultant?
It's, it really depends, because I'm a partner at Chameleon Collective. I'm the founder of FINIEN. I'm doing an interim role right now with an executive search company, and I run Toneoptic. So I am currently stretched a little bit in between a lot of different things, and that will calm down over time again, right? But there are some periods in your life where you just kind of have to plow through. Right now I'm in the period where I have to plow through, and it's usually what happens is it balances out, right? There's some days where something needs you a lot. Magically, most of the time, the other things don't need you that much, and you can push it one day and then the other. And so I'm trying to give 110% to everyone, but obviously the clients are always first, and then Toneoptic, and it has to be second.
So is there anything else you'd add before we get into like a quick fire round and wrap this up?
Oh, quick fire round. Anything to add? The only thing that I would add that we haven't talked about yet, that I, as a former graphic designer / turning into creative director, turning into brand strategist, the one thing that I was always afraid of was the idea of cookie cutting templates that people use for their brand. I say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And the reason why I say this, even though it's part of how we make our living, right, is to create like really great. Look, there are thousands of Shopify templates. We took a Shopify template and we made it into ours, and no one would ever know if it was a template or not, right? And that's where the brand strategy and the design thinking comes in. When you apply that, you can apply it to any template and it will never, ever look like a template again, right? So I think that idea of like strapping a company and saying, no, we don't have money for that. No, we can't do custom code. No, we can't do that. No, we can't do that. It enabled me to actually say, look, no, use whatever you have at your fingertips. Let's just make sure that we set you up for success within those limited realms, right? And I think as designers and as brand agencies and brand consultants, that is something that for me now becomes really, really important, right? I work with clients and I'm like, hey, I can put together this whatever RFP and they can literally put it together while I finish my sentence via AI and then just send it back to me and say, fill it out, right? So there's so much of that changing right now where we have to be acutely aware of how can we utilize all of that on the agency side and the brand building side, as well as on the client side, knowing that clients will need to use it, right? So it's not about, it's more about how do we fit in to that kind of like fast track world and still create amazing design that stands out and brand thinking and stand the flock out, right? You know a thing about that.
Exactly. And why reinvent the wheel, especially when there's so many amazing templates out there that can be customized so easily these days. So I'm with you on that. And yeah, it helps things become more efficient and effective as well if you can customize it. But coming back full circle, it really does come back to having clarity on your brand from the beginning, the strategic work. So
the one thing that has not changed with my process after this, where I'm like, this is the platform and it always will be. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Are you ready for quick fire?
I don't know what it is, so sure, throw me in.
It's just a bunch of questions that are shorter answers than extended.
All right. All right, let's go.
We just touched on this actually. A branding principle that's held true even under pressure.
A brand principle that held through even under pressure.
Branding principle, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's that would really be brand clarity or like brand DNA. Like figure out that one through line.
Yeah. What brand do you admire for launching something truly original?
Toneoptic, Toneoptic. Amazing stuff. Check it out. The RPM, it's insane. Branding, really good too. Needs a little facelift next month. Check it out. Really good. Next.
All right. One thing every product founder should ask themselves before branding anything.
Does the world need my stuff? Like, does the world need my offering? Does the world need my product? I think it's super, super important because with every product comes a lot of junk, a lot of garbage, and like, do we really need it?
Yeah. Well, follow-up question on that. How would you decide if the product, like the world needs it?
Really good follow-up question. Hey, I thought this was quick fire, and now we're like going deep into philosophy. I mean, look, I think I'm just allergic to the idea of putting out stuff with different logos on it or spinning it around a little bit or finding like, here's a white space that we can fill, right? For me, it's about form and function and innovation and putting something out that you think solves someone's problem that is currently not solved in that way. And so I think if you can check those boxes, is there nothing on the marketplace that does this right now? Does it really help people? Like blah, 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 blah. I think those are the type of companies that we need.
Okay, awesome. Last one. Coffee or vinyl? Which one do you consume more of?
Are you insane? This is rigged. Coffee or vinyl? They go together. But no, coffee, absolutely coffee, because I have a day job and I got to get through that with espresso. And then maybe twice a week or 3 times a week, I can actually listen to one of my 2000 records.
Too busy. I'm on board with the coffee. All right. Last bit. You already plugged Toneoptic, but where can people connect with yourself, Toneoptic, and any other plugs you want to put in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So FINIEN.com, FINIEN.com is where you can find my consultancy, my books, my mentorship programs, all of that. Brandtro.com is where my books are at as well. ChameleonCollective.com is where I'm a partner at. It's a brand transformation company. And Toneoptic for all of your vinyl storage needs.
Yes. All you mansion owners out there, get on board.
That's right.
Yes. All right. Final takeaway. If there's one insight you wish every strategist could gain from building a brand themselves, what is it?
I think it comes down to organic branding. I think organic branding needs to be something that we need to fully embrace. That a brand is not created and put on a founder, right? Or put on you, or you just take it and you're like, this is it. This is my brand now. A brand changes constantly, right? The environment changes so quickly. You go on TikTok and Instagram one day and you go there the next day. It's a totally different environment, right? New designs come out. The economy changes like crazy. The world changes like crazy. You just have to constantly change with it as a brand as well. And I think it's really healthy. I think it's really healthy for you to continuously push the brand as a founder. And so have guardrails, but make sure that the guardrails are not pushing you, limiting you in any way, right? You're not the Coca-Cola from 1980 that needs to be the same in 1990 and 2000.
Yeah, that's as wise words, Fabian. Yeah, you got to adapt and evolve, and that's how you survive.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
That's what we're waiting for.
All right, mate. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. It's always a pleasure talking to you. So thank you. And yeah, over and out.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me again.